Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
I don't know. I don't know how I am. I'm good, I think. I'm better today than I have been. I think that, I know you're supposed to have a little bit of a relaxo for Easter, but we didn't have a lot of social stuff on. We were invited to go away and do different things, but my kids are going away on a school trip in 2 days, so we stayed here, and I was a bit rudderless, I might think. I slept a lot, but I didn't do much else, and I was starting to feel a bit lethargic by the end. So today I've been busy, and I'm feeling much better.
Good job.
Nice.
Fascinating, I'm sure, but yeah, I feel good today. I feel much better. Feel back on track. What about you guys? Did you have a lovely Easter? Did you do something nice?
We did lots of jobs around the farm and in the house and stuff that we had a long list, and we got more than I thought we would done, which was really nice. Because Easter's a good time to catch up. It was beautiful, apart from yesterday.
We had a bad day
Beautiful.
yesterday. Yeah. Did you put down your tent that you had out ready for Desi Freeman if he came through? Did you? Well, we don't need that anymore. You put
He's
your little.
Dead, yeah.
I know.
Poor Desi.
You don't need your thing in the backyard anymore in case he comes through your.
No, we took the security cameras down because we don't need them anymore till the next whack job comes around.
You didn't actually have security cameras up, did you?
No more than usual.
Right. So I did much the same, boys. Not farming, of course, but I did mow the lawn and I pruned all the backyard. I did lots of gardening and I was extremely productive.
That's great.
I gave one of my chest freezers, took it all out, chucked out the old shit, cleaned it all out, defrosted it, put it all back in.
Oh, that is a big job.
Well, I'm also only a few weeks out from surgery now, so I'm trying to get everything under control because for 3 months nothing will get done in this house and it'll be feral, so I'm trying to have it start at a good point. So I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarkey. And together we are Trial
by Wine. And what are we drinking?
A Coke Zero. How exciting.
Boys?
Regular listeners might know that my voice sounds a little bit different. I have a bit of a cold. So we're having a hot toddy. So we've got tea and lemon and honey and scotch. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, nice.
So one of us is holding up their end of the deal. I'm just drinking a solo.
Oh, not a hard one.
And I'm not even a hard one. And I'm 3/4 of the way through it. So that's it for me tonight. Well, no, I mean, I'm sure I could run upstairs and get another one if we have any time. But for now, that's me. And who's going to tell us a story today?
I have a story, and it's quite a story.
Do I need to run upstairs and get a few drinks
actually.
already?
You might need a drink.
Really?
I think it does need a little bit of a warning before we get into it.
Oh, a trigger warning already.
I get a drink warning?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think that if you're, to be honest, this would be anybody anyway, but if something of a very violent nature or a sexual nature is something that's not going to sit comfortably with you, this is really not going to sit comfortably with you.
See you next week.
I'd opt out.
Or the week after, depending on the next story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll let you know when you can come back into the room.
Yeah, we'll pop it on Facebook.
If you are a fan of sexual violence.
Oh, no.
Listen in.
Don't email us.
Yeah.
We don't want to know
Can't
about
seek help.
No. Yes.
Yeah, go get some help.
So
anyway,
my
on
sources?
with the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's get cracking because I'm hoping I can find something good out of something bad.
Okay.
That's kind of the plan and the way I'm approaching this. So my sources are allthatisinteresting.com, Nova News South Australia.com, Google, Wikipedia are quite useful in different ways, news24.com, which is again a South African news site. Use Facebook.
I thought you said South Australia.
Yeah,
you
no,
did.
Did I say South Australia?
No, you said SA,
I
think.
Oh, I would have said SA. I meant
Sorry,
South
I
Australia.
must have
South
said
Africa.
Yeah, which
South
of
Australia,
course
sorry.
we would all think is yeah. I
My
was exactly
mistake.
the same.
I should have.
How weird that something bad's happened in South Australia, but it's not.
Surprise, surprise.
I was like, oh,
No.
which one of the
So let's
children
see.
abductions?
So allthingsinteresting.com, Nova News South Australia, SA. So Nova News
Right,
South
right.
Australia. Now I'm saying South Australia, South Africa. South Africa is what I mean to say. This crime is set in South Africa. Nova News South Africa. Google, Wikipedia. News 24, South Africa, but it's just News 24. I used Facebook at one point. I also did this a little while ago, but I watched something which was on YouTube, which was called This Is Monster. Maybe it was This Is Monsters. I just watched a little bit of that. And then there is
This is Monster.
And it doesn't make any sense. There's probably no such thing.
That's the South Australian, South African word for deadly.
South African.
This is monster.
I don't know what that is. And then there's a documentary / movie called Alison, and it was made in
Pretty sad by the sound
2016.
of it.
Okay, so this is a crime that is so shocking that I don't think I would bring it to the table if it didn't have the outcome it does. So I'm going to say up front, because I need to tell you that the account is actually from the person who the crime was committed against. It's actually her telling, it's in her words and her recounting what actually happened, so we know firsthand. So she survives. What she survives is
It's horrific.
absolutely incredible. And I'll go through the detail and the different experts that are involved. And I think if there's light in this, and there really is, it's the fact that she survived this and how she did and what that then meant. So let's go back to the beginning, and I need to introduce you to a young woman by the name of Alison Botha, or Botha, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And Alison lives in Port Elizabeth in South Africa, and Port Elizabeth is a sort of South Australian, South Australian, I keep saying that's going to be a real problem.
Yeah.
South Africa, that's going to be a real problem. Correct me every time I do it, because I'll continue to do it. An Eastern Cape city, I guess, town.
We need
And
a buzzer, like if someone says an answer and it's wrong.
Correct. God, you should have that. You should have that exclusively for my episodes when I call people by the wrong name, say the wrong place. You'd be forever on it. Yeah, it's an Eastern Cape sort of locality, and it's a coastal town, and it's about an 8-hour drive from Cape Town, and it's even further from Johannesburg. So it's kind of in the middle on the Eastern Cape. And Alison had grown up there, and she had actually been the head girl at Collegiate Girls School for Girls. So she had been head girl, and I think looking at photographs of her, she looked like a really fun, popular, well-liked girl. Like, she just looks so happy. And she said after school she didn't really know what she wanted to do, so she did what a lot of women at that time did. She did secretarial studies, so that would always be guaranteed to get you work. And so while she was doing that, she actually thought, I'm going to go and travel. So she actually traveled the world for 4 years. And upon returning home, her mum was like, I'm so glad you're back. It's so good to know that you're here and that you're safe. And there was a certain irony in that. And upon her return, she was an insurance broker, and she quite enjoyed her job, and she worked in an office with a group of great colleagues. And so she was just a happy young woman. She was 27. And in December of 1994, on the 18th of December, it had been a perfect summer's day in Port Elizabeth. She'd been to the beach with her friends, and she said that she was sun-kissed and happy, and kind of, that sort of where you've seen a lot of sun, your skin's a bit tight, and you've just had such a fabulous day, that she invited friends, like the sort of gang, around to her house, and they had pizza and they played board games. And when it was time to leave, she actually offered one of her girlfriends a lift home, because she had done some washing at a friend's house. Perhaps she didn't have a washing machine or whatever else. So she thought, look, I'll drop you off and I'll pick up my washing at the same time, bring it home. So she did exactly that. And when she got close to home, she realised her park had been taken in the time that she'd gone over to her girlfriend's house. So unfortunately, she had to park a little bit further down the street.
At her house still?
At her house. Then, further down the street than she normally would. But, at her home. She's just getting home. She's in the front seat of the car. She pulled up. She leans across to get her freshly washed laundry. And as she does that, she says she feels a rush of warm air come into the car. And before she knows it, she's got a knife at her throat.
Shit.
And she hears a voice say, move over or else I'll kill you. So she thinks, whatever. Oh, my God, I haven't locked the doors. And I mean, this is the 90s. I don't think it was a particularly modern car. It probably was, clinked down. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Yeah. So she moves across and she says, look, at that time I thought I haven't locked the doors. I could jump out. She said, but he said, I don't want to hurt you. And, I just need to use your car for about an hour. I just got to use your car. And she thought, oh, all right. She said, I just tried to calm myself down. He had a knife at her throat. He was actually pretty calm and he was trying to be rather pleasant with her. He then says that his name is Clinton. And then he says, do you have a boyfriend? And she says, I kind of thought at that point, I was kind of lulled into a bit of false sense of security. She said, because I thought, he doesn't really want anything from me. He's asking, have I got a boyfriend? He's told me his name. Nothing's really happening. And she said, so they start driving around. And she said that she was sort of trying to think, I think it'll be okay. Maybe he really just won a car. Although I don't know that there may be many people in South Africa who would think that these days, or even then potentially. And it's at that point that he continues to drive around Port Elizabeth and he pulls over and a second man gets in the car. And that man gets in the back of the car. And she says the moment she's able to clock his face in the rear vision mirror, she said sheer terror coursed through her. She said he had these dead, cold, evil eyes. And she said the other guy hadn't given her that vibe until that point. He was a little bit more like really excited. You know what I mean? He was sort of... makes sense why I was excited because he's obviously then gone and picked up his mate. So the mate, he knew I'm sure it was before they had mobile phones, so he knew where his friend was going to be. He's obviously gone and collected him and they're in the car and she said, I just knew you were there and then I wasn't going home. It dawned on me that this is not going to end well. She says that they drove sort of out of the populated area of Port Elizabeth and continued on to an area which I don't know exactly where it is, but from maps and what I can gather, it just feels like a bit of a shrubby sort of isolated area near a beach. So she said they go beyond the last set of sort of lights, suburban sort of lights. And then she said it's really just us on a track heading somewhere in the dark. And she said, I can just feel it sort of closing in on me. So the driver pulls up in a little, they described it as an alcove, but again, the best way I describe it is, so you've left the main road, you've gone down like a track, like road kind of thing, and again, shrubs around you, sand, dirt, like that kind of, back off a beach, that kind of coastal, shrubby kind of thing. Yeah. So that's where they've pulled up. And at this point, they tell her they're going to have sex with her, and they ask her, are you going to fight us? Like, you're going to fight? She's like, well, she goes, what am I going to do? No. She said, I don't say that to them, but she said, I just thinking, why? Well, what's the point? So she says no. So first of all, one of the men, and it's the one who was driving, Clinton, he forces her to have oral sex with him. He then does the same to her. Yeah. And the whole time he's doing this sort of stuff, he's saying to her things like, does your boyfriend do this to you? He bites her on the breast. He gives her a love bite. Then he starts kissing her all over the face. And then he rapes her.
Oh, gross.
And when he's finished, the other chap comes across and calls him Franz, not Clinton. So his name is not Clinton, as it turned out. And he yells out to him, Franz, Franz. And then Franz says to the other guy, do you also want to have sex with the lovely lady? To which the other guy says, no, I want to fuck the bitch. God. To which Franz says, no, you can't talk to her like that. She's a lady. Speak properly to her after having just raped her. Franz then leaves the car and the other guy, whose name is Thierry Kruger, gets into the car and rapes her. The last memory that she has at this point is him grabbing her by the throat, and she remembers this because she says her bowels evacuated. That was the last thing she remembered of that point. And she comes to as the pair of them are above her, stabbing her in the abdomen and pubic area.
God.
They stabbed her in excess of 37 times across her stomach and lower pelvic region. She then says that Tians was the first to cut her throat.
What?
And Franz pushed him out of the way. And then Franz slashed her throat because she was conscious during this. Not that she knew the count, but he slashes her throat 17 times. And she says behind him was the moon, so it looked like he had a halo. And she says that when this is happening, she's not necessarily in pain. She says, I know it's not a dream. I know it's happening. But the sounds and the sensations are things that she remembers. And she said the sound was a wet sound, and it's actually the throat being, they were going backwards and forwards, slashing her throat.
God.
It is so violent. I'm so sorry. So at this point, they've literally stabbed her 37 times in the abdomen and pelvis, and now they've slashed her throat 17 times. And then they're looking at her, and she says in Afrikaans, they say, one of them says to the other, do you think she's dead? And the other one says, no one could survive that. And it's at that point they leave her for dead. And she is still conscious enough that she says that she can see their feet, because she's obviously on the ground, getting smaller and smaller, and their voice is fainter and fainter. And then she says, I can see them getting into the car and throwing my clothes out of the car, and they drive off. And she says she couldn't feel any pain. And she says, but at that point, she said there's this awful noise that she can hear. And it turns out it's her breathing, because they've cut through her.
Oh, my
Gurgling,
God.
Yeah.
Shows she's breathing through a severed windpipe. They've sliced it. Yeah. So she said the noise is terrifying her. She said it's actually such a bad noise, but that's the noises coming from her. And she said that's when it dawns on her that she said, I've been injured beyond, not really injured, beyond hope. And she says that she feels at this point this overwhelming sadness. And she said, I know I'm dying. And she said, I just feel this real heavy sadness. And at this point, she says that she literally leaves her body and she's up above her body, looking down at her naked, sort of broken body in this little clearing. This was watching. I was literally just tears rolling down my face.
Right,
she's alive now, right? So it's coming. It's her words, telling us how. It's just remarkable. And she said when she got to a certain height, which she said wasn't terribly high, but she was high. She said the sound of my breathing stopped. She said it went totally silent, just so quiet. And she said I could see myself. And she said, and I had this thought, and she thought, look, I'm distant enough, but I'm not too far that it's not over.
Not done yet.
I don't know what's happening, but she said that she felt like she had a chance if she wanted to return to her body, that she could do that at that point. And she said that she thought, I don't want to die. I'll live a better life, whatever else. Yeah. Yep. So the next thing is she's back in the body, and it's the sound again. She said, oh my God, it's just the sound.
Breathing.
Well, she's breathing. I don't know what happened there.
When she was out of the body, she stopped breathing.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Something said, are you done? And she said, no, I'm not. And so she was back in.
Yeah. But she's so cognizant, and it comes on later. Like that's the thing that I find really hard to get my head around when all the crimes that we've covered, when this plays out, you'll just be amazed at how conscious she is of things that are happening and how it's working. So she's back in her body, and she's very aware of the noise, but she says she still thinks I can't let this ever happen to anyone else. So you are not going to believe what she does, but lying broken in this sort of sandy dirt, she gets her finger and she writes Franz in sand, like in the dirt that she's lying in. She's able to write Tiens, the name of the other guy. And then underneath that, she writes, I love Mum.
Oh.
So assuming she thinks she's going to not make it, she's like, they'll know who it is.
Oh, you're making me cry.
I know it's just insane that I've never heard this. This crime is remarkable. So she's lying there. So she's now written Franz and Tiens and I love Mum, hastily in the sand with all the energy she's got. It's at this point she becomes aware there's something wet on her leg, and she is able to feel and realizes it's her stomach, and it's actually her intestine. They've disemboweled her.
Oh my God, she's still alive.
I know, right? She grabs her shirt, which is nearby. I just can't believe. This just beggars belief myself. She's able to move a shirt off the sand that's near her and pull it in across and hold her stomach in. because she's then has this thought, which is, if I die here now, they're going to know I've written in, this is what she's thinking, they're going to know, Mum's going to know I was alive long enough to write in the sand. They'll know I've got to get out of here. I've got to survive. I've got to survive this because I can't leave my mum knowing. She's going to know how bad of what's happened, and I've survived it long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's totally focused on doing it so that they don't have the questions there. She's not left there with her parents going, oh my God, how much did she suffer or whatever else.
Yeah.
So she starts to attempt to crawl. So she's got, so her left hand holding her stomach in, and on this sand, like where she's, scrolling
about. What is she lost at this point?
She is crawling on, like, there's broken glass, there's rubbish, there's dirt. It's just gross.
Syringes,
and she starts to try and move.
Least of her problems, in fairness.
And she tries to sort of stand up, and it's at that point, and you'll think that this is all exaggeration, but it can be all proved by what happens when she's found. She goes to sort of try and get up, but her head totally falls backwards because, remember, they've cut her.
Oh, my God, they've cut her.
They've nearly decapitated her. So she realises she has to hold.
So she's holding her guts
head
and her head.
And her head. So she's holding hand on the stomach and hand on her head to keep herself kind of together.
To your point about how conscious she is of everything.
I don't know, it must be, I don't know.
Something.
It's crazy, yeah. So she's able to sort of right herself.
Inexplicable.
Yes. And she sort of pulls herself up, and she can see through the shrub headlights going. She's not too far from the main road. So she thinks, if I can just get to the main road, then anything, whatever, let's see what happens. Now, in the written stuff, they don't talk about this, but in the interview with her, she says she doesn't really know how she made it, however many meters it was from where she was to the side or to the road. She said it felt like she was being moved, because she said, I don't really remember that part. I remember the beginning and how hard that was, and I remember trying to stand up and kind of falling down and passing out, and then having to, pull myself together. And then how she got to the road is remarkable.
Pull myself together. I've never heard anything
she
more
gets
literal.
to the road, and she knows if she's got any chance of anyone finding her, she's got to get to the middle of the road and be on the white line. So she does.
Do you remember when we did was it Mary Vincent who had her arms cut off by her assailant? And do you remember that one? The lady.
Swanny does. She's all over it.
Forearms with a machete or something.
Oh,
and
God.
She walked, had to hold them up, and she got out of a culvert, and the first people who came across her on the road were so terrified by this blood-soaked, armless woman that they drove off because they got a fright. Can you imagine a woman holding her head on and holding their guts in?
That's what I was thinking. Who's going to stop? And
who's going to stop?
Let me tell you.
Hopefully.
So she remembers arriving at the road. She does become aware, and she says, I get to the road, I collapse in the middle of the road, and she said, and I'm done. She says, I know, I have nothing left. The fight has gone. So whatever was propelling her to get to that point.
Like adrenaline or whatever.
Done. There's nothing left. Nothing left. And she's like, at that point, she's like, whatever happens, happens. I've got away from that. She's done everything that she can do. So while she's there, again, she's still conscious enough to know a car comes, and the car stops, and she says for a moment she thinks, oh, my God, what if it's Franz and Tans coming back to get me?
Oh,
and then she's like, I don't. What does it matter? I'm done. I'm done now. At this point, fucking doesn't matter. And that car stops and drives off. And there's no, we don't know who that was. No,
someone who went, oh, my God. I don't know what to do with that.
What? I can't. I've had a bad day.
But the next car is the car that matters, right? And this is, as dark as this story is, there are all these people that play roles from this bit on where you just go, those monsters, I don't even really particularly want to focus on them. They're coming back into the story, of course. But there are people that are angels and skilled surgeons. It is a remarkable story because of all the positive things, if we can take something like that out of it. So while she's on the white line, along comes a second car. And in that second car is a 20-year-old veterinarian technology student from Johannesburg who's on holidays with his friends down in Port Elizabeth. And his name, confusingly, because it sounds like one of the assailants, but it's spelt totally different, is Tian Elerd. And he gets out of the car and he kind of can't believe what he's seeing, but there's a naked woman covered in blood, nearly dead, and he goes over and he takes her hand and he starts talking to her. He said her eyes were totally bloodshot and he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. He took his shirt off and he yelled to his friends, and just through pure luck, one of his friends was able to did have a mobile phone, which no one really even had at that point. 94,
Back
very
then,
unusual back then, yeah. So that person is able to call the emergency services, and say we've found this woman. Please, send help now. So she describes him as her knight in shining armor, and he spoke to her and talked, offered her comfort, and he was just incredible. The hospital was about 15 minutes away, but it didn't take 15 minutes for the paramedics to arrive. It was actually a long wait. And the way he described it, he said, I was down on the road with her, just trying to keep her with us. 10 minutes goes past, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes later.
So they've nearly decapitated her, but not cut through her jugular, and so she's not bled to death at this point. This is extraordinary.
It is. There are a whole host of things that you then see surgeons go through, which is things were, that some things did go and other things didn't. But, you'd lost to your brain. How, most people would have just been out, right?
Gone.
You hear one person get a nick here, the cricket ball, all that stuff in the side of the head, neck, wherever, you're done.
Yep.
And yet here she is, just, I don't know, it's remarkable.
Insisting on staying alive. Yep.
Insisting on staying alive. So the paramedics arrive, and as Tian's described it, he says they didn't drive fast. He said there was no real rush. He said, I just didn't think there's no way she'd be able to survive it. And he says that the first time he let go of her hand was actually in casualty. So he was with her the entire time. So 40 minutes, 15 minutes, probably 55 minutes all up, holding her hands. What is really quite beautiful about this is as a result of that night, he goes on to become a doctor. And I don't think it was an easy thing for him. He was, when he was doing, but he wasn't doing vet science, he was doing veterinarian technical studies, which is quite different. And I think it did take him quite a long time to graduate, but he did. He is a doctor. And he said it was totally watching her that night and seeing how you can really save someone's life. So it's quite remarkable. I keep saying remarkable because I don't know what else to say. So all in, her journey from her home, outside her house, out to the site, her leaving her body, going back to her body, putting everything back together, getting to the road, and actually waiting on the road for about 40 minutes. The entirety was only 90 minutes. All that happened in an hour and a half.
Oh,
wow.
It was not a big thing. They picked her up and they were straight out to what they were going to do. Do you know what I mean? And they did what they had to do. Then they'd left her for dead. So it was really the surviving part, which is the long part of that journey. Alison arrives in intensive care, obviously critical care, I don't know, what do you want, emergency, in Port Elizabeth in South Africa. And the first person that I have seen being interviewed about this, and being interviewed many, many years later, is the anaesthetist who was there that night. And his name is Dr. David Common? Yes, I think that's how to pronounce it. What you find with everybody who had anything to do with her, no one could believe the severity of the injuries and the fact that she was alive. So he described the horror of her injury, the brutality, the ferociousness, and the mindless destruction of a human. He said, I'm a man of science, and he said, I had never seen something like that, and I've never seen another human do something like that to another human. And he could not get his head around the fact that when he went in and he saw her throat, that's all he saw to start with, because she was covered with her sheet. And a younger doctor had taken him in, and he said it was the most horrendous neck injury he'd ever seen. and that she was actually lacerated from ear to ear. Her windpipe had been cut through, and she was actually breathing through a hole above her collarbone. That's how she was, that's where all the noise and that was coming from. And he said he wasn't even aware of what had happened to her abdomen. And so he's focusing on this. And then that's when the other doctor says, I need to show you something else. And he said, when they revealed her abdomen, he said the patient was completely disemboweled and that her entire intestines were contaminated with sand, charcoal.
Yes.
There were bits of glass in there
Shit
from where
everywhere,
she'd been crawling through the dirty sand.
I thought that when you talk about the getting the shirt, and I thought,
yeah. And he said it was very clear that it was very unlikely that she would ever have the privilege of being able to have children because they had done such enormous damage to her lower pelvis as well. So this is rather heavy going, isn't it?
yeah,
It's a lot.
So the general
aren't
surgeon
enough glass
on call, who has a very Russian-sounding name, but was actually, well, he'd trained in Germany. So his name was Dr. Dmitry Angelov. And again, I've seen him be interviewed about Alison's time with him in theatre. And again, these very, very serious surgeons are unable to really grasp how she managed
she's
to
alive.
be alive when they get her on, and that she survives and does the way she does it. He says, I've seen a lot of things, but that injury made of striking severe cruelty is one doesn't see. You just don't see that. He said, I've seen, victims of crime. I've seen lots and lots of car accidents, things with, horrendous impact and whatever else. He said, but this was a level of cruelty that I'd never seen in all my years. And he said his first impression of, I guess it wasn't her first impression of her when she was conscious was he was standing outside looking through into her room through the window, and she was able to write her name and her mother's phone number. And they show the writing. So this is after she's been sort of stitched up, and they're putting a form in front of her, and she writes Alison and then gives them her mum's phone number. She has been incubated, I think it's called, when they have to put
Intubated.
Intubated, not
Yep.
incubated, intubated. And he says, I don't understand that. How's she
conscious?
manage to write her name and her mum's phone number? But the original anaesthetist that I spoke about, he said that, and I don't know if Dr. Dimitri is still alive or whatever. I mean, this is, again, interviews that have happened, 20 years later. He said he cannot believe the incredible surgery and how meticulous and how caring Dr. Angelov was that night. He said his surgical techniques were like nothing I've ever seen. He said he cleaned and scrubbed and got every bit of debris. He said he was turning her, every part of her intestine, putting it back inside her. He said there was nothing was left undone. And he said, but the thing that was the hardest thing for him, he said, I can't find in my scientific brain, I can't find a scientific reason for some of the things, how she survived.
For her survival.
Really. Yeah. He said, and he said, I normally am the person that says, when you say it was a miracle, he says, I tend to think it's a cop-out. He said, I think it's something that you can't explain. So it's easier to say, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. He said, but this totally challenged my scientific mind, and I can't tell you how this was, how she survived. I just don't know. And then not only survived, she wasn't in a coma. She was able to communicate with them. So you're not going to believe this. So this is all on the night that this has happened. The next morning, Dr. Common, the anaesthetist, says that he's made aware by the nurses that there are 2 police officers in the waiting room saying they're here because they're investigating a brutal rape. And this is when we meet Detective Melvin Humple. And again, another one of these people, such
Melvin
names,
Humple.
Melvin Humple, who just can't believe it. And they are just on board, right? This just galvanizes people in a way which is like, what have you done to this girl? This is just not on. And people just went, right, no, nothing's going to be too much. We're going to make this work. Now, as a result of what happens next, they're able to get the rapist very, very quickly. So the investigating officers.
No one could survive that. Wrong.
So remember, the evidence is also from the site where the names are, I think.
Yep.
And they are able to go into her the next morning, and the guy has a little booklet with these photographs of people in it, of which Franz and
Is it
Tian's
this
in.
guy? Is it Franz? Is it this guy? Yes, that one and that one.
And she points that one and that one, which they're right.
Jesus, good on her.
And then that afternoon he returns because the chief prosecutor has said that is wonderful, but is there any chance she could verbalise it? And I'm there like, oh, I don't think so. She's intubated, as it were.
Yeah, she's intubated.
And this is where they
Her
go
windpipe's been cut.
Yeah, they go to Dr.
God knows what's
Common.
left of her, larynx.
Yeah. I know. I think that's what she sounded like at that point. And they go to the doctor and they say to her, look, to him, verbal qualification of who identification would be even better. So he goes to her and he says, I've got major concerns. He says, because if I disrupt that, I could disrupt
Damage
the
more.
tracheosuture line where they've and he said, it's gone sort of through her vocal box to get to her lungs.
Her larynx. That's it. Yeah.
She writes, he tells her,
pull it out, bastards.
She writes, take it out.
Oh my God.
He takes it out. She speaks and she says, that's wonderful. My attackers were Franz and Tian's.
Now you can put it back in.
I just can't believe it. You know what I mean?
Have it.
That's wonderful. Friends at Tian's.
Correct.
So I will come on to
beyond extraordinary.
What happens, but I know. So she stays in. She's moved from.
Was there anything about her before this happened that indicated that she
Nothing.
was this
Nothing.
wildly self-directed and going to survive at all odds kind of person? Brazilian, who was
so resilient.
What?
It's just a freakish story, right? So I'm going to cut it up. Sort of chop up.
Pardon the pun.
So what's the word I'm after? That's bad. So I'm going to move
Maybe
around
not
a little bit
saying
here, but I'm going to move a little bit ahead here. So she survived. She's moved into a general ward. She said she's heavily injured and, for the rest of her life will be, and in enormous pain. But she has this incredible support from everyone who's ever known her and everybody who's never met her. South Africa is behind her, right? And with all of this swell, she's totally buoyant. So when she's released from hospital, she takes out an ad piece in the local newspaper as a thank you. And it's this beautiful piece. I'm not going to say, but the last line is, now let's hope I can read my writing again. I have life because of you beautiful people, and you have my heart. And she just becomes this sort of like darling where she's not angry. She just doesn't want them to be able to do it again. She's so focused on having them what's the word I'm after? Put away, and her having her time in court that she's like, right, all guns are blazing. Let's do this. I'll do whatever it takes. So she suffers enormously through the next little bit before it gets to court because she has to give so much of herself constantly to ensure that the case is watertight. You wouldn't think she'd have to do anything, right?
No.
Look, it's all done, but
it's
they
94,
didn't want.
There's probably not DNA and all that sort of stuff.
They didn't want any loopholes.
Any risk. Yep.
Right. So what's happening with Franz and Tian's? So the night that they commit the crime, they then go back to the flat where Franz lives with his wife and child. And when she identifies them, plus they've got the names and whatever else, they've both got prize. They've both raped women before, and they're both known.
Well, the fact that they had a book and they were like, which one of these told me that they were already known for probably violent assault.
There was enough evidence straight up. Verbal, written, the site itself, and her just saying this is who it is. So Franz du Toit and Tian's Kruger are caught out. They're caught at this flat apartment, and it's said, and again, I've read this somewhere maybe once or twice, that they were preparing to do more. Like they really had a bit of a taste. They weren't done. They weren't done. This was
on a bender.
Because they'd said that with the other women that they had attacked, one was a pregnant woman and another woman that was raped happened to run downstairs, escape, and ran into like a police truck. So they had been caught out before and they were like, well, we can't let that happen. We will murder them from now on. That's how it ends. So they can't, we don't need people dobbing on us.
Stop raping
Surviving.
people.
No.
We'll just kill them so there's no witnesses.
They were also in possession of items belonging to Alison. When being interviewed by Melvin Hempel, so when they've brought them in, so the fact, and I also, actually I'll come on to that in a minute. When Hempel is interviewing Franz, he tells him he's being arrested for rape and attempted murder. And
what do you mean attempted?
It says, what do you mean attempted murder?
I mean, I gave it a good go. She should be dead.
She's dead. And Melvin says, she's alive. And he says, I've never seen a hardened criminal look like they could be knocked over by a feather. He said he was in a state of shock. And he said, well, nothing I can hide from you because she's going to tell you everything. And then he goes to his hand and he pulls a ring off and he goes, that's hers. And he had one of Alison's rings on. And Melvin says it was still covered in her blood.
In blood. Oh, my God. What an
dirty fucker.
It's disgusting.
And he says, I asked him, why? Why do you leave your wife and child to go out and rape and murder women? Why? No answer to that. And then later I see the prosecutor for the case being interviewed, and she talks about what it's like to drive past that flat. She said, I drive past those flats all the time. And she says, I still cannot believe that when they were caught, it was the next morning, they had the bloody knife at the breakfast table. They're just monsters, you know.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Feral.
Yeah. Really feral. Now, when I looked into this case, what I found really interesting was I thought there was going to be this whole backstory about how they'd had these horrendous lives, what they'd done. There's really nothing there. You can look up their names and it just comes back to this and what happened and what happens next. And I'm okay with that because, to be honest, there's enough positives for me to focus on in this story to try and get us out of this, hole I've dug for us, which is just horrendous, that I don't need to know. I've seen photos of them and they are not, oh God, you just wouldn't wish it.
You don't want to hear some sob story of how hard their life's been that's made them do that. Yeah, it's...
I just don't care. I mean, one of them's got a wife. I don't know I think it was wife and child. I don't know. What then becomes apparent is that, hang on, I might used to be here. Melvin says, I have to make sure that they're going to plead guilty, and that's great. There's no reason why they shouldn't. But he says, you can only prosecute on what you supply. He says, so I need to supply everything. I'm going to go over and above. I'm going to make sure that if there's any evidence that I can show, I'm going to find it. Even if you think you don't need it, if I put it out there, they're going to have to see it and they're going to have to use it. So he really, knuckles down. Alison, meanwhile, is in very much a recovery mode, and we're now sort of 5 to 6 months out from the crime, and it's really, really tricky for her. She's having clinical psychology sessions and assessments constantly, and she's not necessarily where they think she should be. She's saying, I'm being told that I should be, there's a pendulum of trauma that'll swing from, good from grief to sorrow to hatred to anger. And she said they really wanted me to be at anger with them. And she said at the end, I was just getting angry with the psych. She said, because I was just having to give so much of myself, which I was happy to do because I needed them to be, put away. But she said, what you've got to remember is, she said, I had an open wound, and my most private part. She said, I would have to go to like a police, the police officer. A lot of it was with Melvin and, his team or whatever else, to show the recovery, to show how, how awful this wound was. She said it was an open wound still. And Melvin says what she went through was remarkable. And he said she knew we were doing it for her. We were doing it. We knew we were doing it for her. He said we were all on the same page in that respect. He said, but that doesn't negate the fact that, you've got a young woman having to take her pants down in front of policemen, having her pubic hair pulled and, photographs taken. He said it was just so invasive that, I just really feel for her. She was remarkable from the beginning, the whole way through. She had so much asked of her the whole time. Okay. They also found that they had to do a first in South Africa, which was she was expected to go in front of an identification parade and point out, she was supposed to touch on the shoulder who had raped her. And this was the first time they actually did it behind the one-way glass so that she didn't actually have to go in the same room as them.
Yeah.
But even still, a group of men lined up with their, things, and they walk her into a one-way mirrored room. And that was really traumatic for her. And I think for everybody who had to sort of witness the kind of thing, all of these awful crimes. And then the really bad, and of course she knew exactly who they were straight off. She had seen enough of them and knew exactly who they were. Thank goodness that there was no sort of question mark there. The next thing which I found to be interesting was Frans du Toit decides that, you know what, I think I might have a problem. And the fact is, I think I'm possessed. I'm a Satanist. And where this is actually quite interesting is there was a thing at the time which was very big in the US and also in South Africa, which they called, it was a term called the satanic panic. And I don't know if it rings any bells with you, but there was a couple of things going on. And
the satanic panic, we've talked about it before in America.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. And we talked about how in the sort of 80s or 90s, I think we had it a bit here. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it becomes, late 80s, 90s, big in the US and also South Africa. And I think here's the thing. So
I just saw it as people liking grunge music and goth shit. I didn't really think
bit more
of
that. And remember there's crimes.
Satanic.
There was one in Canada. I think, did I do it or did you do it, Schmitty? I can't remember.
I did
one. Canadian crime very early on, yes. That was.
I did something about the satanic panic.
Yeah. So Frans says, look, I think I'm possessed or whatever. So Melvin Hempel says, I know a pastor who does, what's it called?
Schmitty?
Exorcism. So he gets the pastor to visit him in the cells and they film it all. And he makes mistakes with his demons' names. He gets a bit confused, so he just outs himself as a fraud. He says at one point he's talking about that he's incubus, then he's succubus, and he just doesn't quite know what he's talking about. So
he doesn't know his incubus from his succubus.
He doesn't know his shit.
Doesn't know what a real possessed man would say.
No. So they're able to sort of dispel that, and they deal with it, and they're like, rightio, let's not play games. So the trial, and I'm probably going to pronounce this, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly unless any of you know Afrikaans, becomes known as the Noordhoek Ripper trial. And I suspect that's that land, the place where that little alcove was with where she was. And they're also known, or it was known as the Ripper Rapist trials. They call them the Ripper Rapists.
God.
Yeah. Well, we'll just call it Alison Botha, I think. That'll be better.
Versus...
Yeah. So
what is it? The Crown versus du Toit and whatever the other dickhead's name is.
Kruger. Yeah.
Kruger.
Yeah. But they don't really pronounce it like that. And of course I can't do a South African accent. I won't do that.
Kruger.
Yes, it is more like that, yes.
Yeah, Kruger.
So they go to court and the judge is Judge Chris Jansen, and he says that throughout the trial he said that they're clearly trying to intimidate me. He said, they would stare at me. And he said, and then we did the whole Satanist thing that comes up again with Frans is trying to, suggest that he's possessed by the devil and there's all that sort of stuff going on. He's like, I just wasn't having it. At the same time, Melvin Hempel says to both of them, I'm not going to handcuff you. I'm not going to handcuff you when we go into trial. Test me, shoot them if they did anything. He said, I'll do it in a second. So he said they were never in handcuffs. He said, because I just was waiting for the opportunity.
I just wanted one.
He said, I don't like shooting. He goes, I'm not a hunter. I don't know anything. He said, but I would have shot those two. He said, given the chance. He said, I just would have given them. And he said, he said, they were never in handcuffs. You'll find if you go back and look at anything, they were never in handcuffs. Because they were always under threat of killing them. Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't to get shot to get out of it, actually.
It'll be your last.
That surprises me. It'll be your last. Yes. So Judge Chris Jansen says that the death sentence was not an option. And he says, on reflection, he says, then and now, he said, I still think about it a lot. And he said, if it was, he said, I would have seriously considered imposing it. And he said, they were not the kind of people who looked like they were remorseful or rehabilitated. Yeah. Yeah.
He couldn't rehabilitate them. They were
He also,
psychopaths.
when he sentences them, he says that, one of them has 2 rapes, one of them has 1 previous rape, one has 2 previous rapes. No remorse at all. And so he puts a note on their file when he sentenced them to life in prison. And there's a note that suggests that they never be released. And he said, there's not much more than that I can do. But he said that I had special notes for them just saying, I don't know that these people ever need to be.
Does South Africa not have a whole life order?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, come on. There's more to that. So in terms of Alison on trial, she was incredible, of course. And, she's up there and the scar around her neck. And they show, well, I've seen other footage, but it would have been shared in the court, was just how many wounds she had. So, the total thing from here to here, all of these sort of stab marks. Her abdomen is just like, there's one big line down the middle where they've literally sort of sliced her open as such.
Oh, stop it.
And then there's all the other stab marks. It's just this. And then things that you don't take into account, like the bloodshot eyes, things like that still hadn't totally come back.
Oh,
she was like, her hand, everything, her whole body was affected.
A mess, yeah.
Yeah. But, when you look at her on the stand, she looks remarkably well because you can't really see what's going on inside. And I guess it's as good a time as anyway. So in one of the documentaries I've seen, Dr. Coleman stands up and he has has a model with the injuries, and then they show like illustrations of how it missed things. So to your point, things like
the jugular
got a muscle. That's why her neck went back, right?
Yeah,
that went, but then the blood vessels and things that were going to her brain, some of it missed. So she didn't end up with brain damage or didn't die immediately. Like there's something that just would have been gone like that. And it's like, some of them are just incredible. When they were stabbing her to make sure she'd never have children, they missed some of her vital organs. They missed, like, when they got around here a bit, they missed her heart, they missed her lungs. So
it's like when you said she was disemboweled. It's like they just opened her up and her guts fell out.
Yeah, and maybe that protected other things. I don't know, but her other organs were okay. Like wasn't a kidney or a liver? Yes.
Exactly. Like it was all there, but just sort of hanging out kind of thing.
It doesn't really make sense in many respects, but that's to your point, which is, hang on, how is that the case where you're saying she's nearly decapitated, yet, how come her brain's okay? How come that all still worked? How could she have been conscious? And it's because everything just got missed that needed to be missed. So in August 1995, they're sentenced to life in prison. Alison said the whole courtroom drama for her, she said in many respects it was just like watching a TV. She didn't feel like it was even her. She said at times, she said that she would hear her name and she'd be a bit, surprised.
Like, what? Huh?
And like she and her mum sat together and they've got notes. Like they read. It was a bit like that where they'd be writing, is he serious or are they for real? And the next thing they're talking about what they're having for lunch. She said it's weird how your brain works. A lot of it I just dissociated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she gets all the way through the trial, off to prison they go, and it's only a little bit of time later that she finally takes a look at herself in the mirror for the first time.
Oh.
And that sets off a quite negative season for her, and she falls into a deep depression. And for someone who was so vitally alive and, so friendly and whatever else, she said, I stopped going to work. And she said, it wasn't even that I stopped going to work. She said, I didn't care enough to even call them to tell that I wasn't going to work. She said, I wasn't angry or upset. She goes, I just didn't care. She said, I just didn't care. And I often hear people talk about what that real depression is. It's the lack of, just don't care. Just don't care. And, it was only through spending a little bit of time at that very low point that she was able to sort of have a bit of a wake-up call and thought, you know what? You chose this. You wanted to come back and you're giving all this power to France and Tians. Wake up. And it's around this time that she receives an invite from the Rotary Club, which, of course, my father was a very proud member of.
Tony's a Rotarian.
They asked her to come and speak.
In fact, he's at Rotary tonight. Yeah.
Well, there you go. My dad was a Rotary member. That's very nice. And really, that is what changes everything, and it sets her off on another course entirely, where this one public speaking engagement, she said I was terrible at that. I was like, well, I'm not sure if you were terrible if you're head girl, but anyway, let's see. And all of a sudden she says, I go from being this victim to someone who can heal through creating a new business because I have a cause that I can talk to people about. Anyway, so she becomes a motivational speaker, and before she knows it, she's traveling around the world. She goes to 35 different countries and she's a motivational speaker and she looks phenomenal. She's got, fabulous little business suit on, very attractive, seeing the world, going and inspiring people with her story of resilience. And you think, you're having a bad day, I think I can probably... She said it helped me hugely with my pain management, all of the things. Not all of that stuff was still there. She said, I'm in pain every day of my life. But it gave her a focus and some more good sort of will that had come out of this. So whilst that's happening, the documentary, they called it a movie. It's more of a documentary that I saw was made in 2016. And that the question of parole comes up because she is terrified and she talks openly about, this is my biggest fear. And she said, I've had a woman in the US, this is back in 2016, get in touch with me to say her daughter is currently the fiance of Frans du Toit. I need help. Alison is furious. She said, these guys have social media accounts. So from in jail, that's that thing, where we've seen this so many times where they find people on the outside who help them or who always fall in love with them.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm being approached by someone else to help with him. So she's destroyed by that. She's really angry and very scared. And she's like, my worst case scenario is that they're allowed
released. Yeah.
In 2016, when this documentary is being made, Alison makes a request or shares some information with the government that says, I don't want him released. I'm being contacted by someone internationally saying he's engaged and that, they want my help. These people, these men do not deserve to leave prison at this point. This idea of they're up for parole or coming up for parole, I just don't think it's right. What do you think they did with that? They sent it to him. They sent Frans du Toit her letter saying, I just can't believe that, saying, right, Jesus. I don't want him to ever get out. So he becomes aware that this is being made, this documentary film, and he approaches the filmmakers and offers
he wants to be in it?
To interview. He wants to be interviewed. But he does have some requests that must be met for him to be interviewed. His first request is that he must have a letter of forgiveness signed by Alison.
No.
Fuck. Number 2, and this is it, right? He wants profit shares from Alison's book sales and motivational speaking backdated.
No.
Why? Because Frans believes that what he did to Alison is the only reason for her success story. So that interview, thankfully, was declined. That is just
a sign of how psychopathic and horrendous this individual is, and complete lack of any remorse whatsoever.
Right.
What an animal.
I have some lovely news, and the lovely news is that the miracles were she went on to have 2 sons. She wasn't supposed to, and she carried 2 healthy boys through healthy pregnancies.
Wow.
And she said, look, the marriage didn't last. She said, but I have these 2 beautiful boys. And she said, no one thought I could or would. She said it was not even really discussed. She said it was just given that it probably would never happen for me because I just had so much scarring. And she said, even when I was pregnant, she said, wasn't a problem. It was just, again, another thing that didn't make sense, but it did happen. And this is really beautiful. So the doctor who helped assist on the birth of her second child was the young vet technical student, Tian, who saved her really that night on the thing. Isn't that awesome? Beautiful. I love that. I really love that. But we now need to move. So that's around 2016, the last time sort of she's interviewed, and she's fearful of what's going to happen. And this is this program, if you want to watch it, and it's quite amazing. And it's called Alison. In July 2003, after 28 years, Alison finds out through the media that they have been paroled.
What?
Yeah.
Finds out through the media too.
Yeah, that they were out.
So how long were they in for?
28 years. Okay. The headline, this is in Network 24, a South African news article. Kruger and Dutoy. Judge recommended no parole. Remember I said that. With the release of her two attackers, Alison Botha, now 55, feels disillusioned and terrified, not only for herself but also for others in society, now that her attackers, Tiens Kruger and Frans Dutoy, are now no longer behind bars after almost 3 decades.
Let me guess, they didn't rape a single person in jail.
Yeah.
That old chestnut.
They were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1995 for the horrific attack on Alison in Port Elizabeth. Botha's name is now known internationally as the victim who miraculously survived in December 1994 after being raped by 2 men, stabbed 37 times in the stomach and having her throat cut 17 times. She was hijacked on the night in question and taken to a deserted area along the city's coastline, where they left her for dead with gaping stab wounds to her stomach and neck. She managed to drag herself to the road where a passing motorist, Tianella, came across her and called for help. So after all that, they are released, and I think there's a bit of an outcry when this happens in South Africa. She never received any information or reasons as to why their parole conditions were to find themselves being released. And so that is in July of 2023. And after they are unexpectedly released, she then goes on to have a really, really tough year. Like, she starts to suffer from depression again. And she said, look, I have really bad headaches often. One of the things relates to the muscle that connects her head here.
A neck.
Imagine if that's been like, imagine if you've kind of been totally short. Yeah. She said, so I often have headaches. It's no big surprise. But she said, I did wake up one morning and she has a horrendous headache. And she said, but I kind of just think it's just the usual. And it's only later that a son finds her collapsed in their home. And it's at that point that they go in and find out that she's actually had a burst aneurysm. So she lost her vision. So this is in 2024, I think this happens. And she lost her vision. She couldn't speak. She couldn't turn over. And she has multiple brain surgeries. And she does go into rehab and she does survive. And the wonderful news is that on the 4th of February last year, 2025, they had their parole cancelled and they were returned to prison for their life. And I can read that too as well. The parole of Frans Dutoy and Tiens Kruger, who were convicted of her attack in 1997, has been revoked. The Minister of Correctional Services, Dr. Peter Groenewald, cancelled the parole earlier this year. In a statement on the 4th of February, he said, this decision was made in accordance with the Correctional Services Act, which empowers the Minister to cancel parole for individuals sentenced to life imprisonment. The Minister's primary consideration is the imperative of protecting and securing the community, particularly in instances where acts of violence against women and children have been committed. So they are back inside.
So, Swanny, they were out for about 2 years, is that right?
Quite a while, yeah, actually. Yeah, you're probably right.
And didn't...
I don't know anything about that.
It wasn't something that they did that put them back in. It was the public outcry.
I have no optics on anything that happened in that time in relation to them. It was just, I don't know where they were or what they were doing. But, they were not inside. And
yeah, but they didn't go and commit a crime.
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
They didn't break parole or whatever it's called.
No, it wasn't related to that. It was just a general outcry from obviously lots of different people. And I can't really find anything on where Alison's at the moment. I think she's probably still in recovery. But there's nothing terribly current that I can find or could find last week.
That
in relation to
would be horrendous to have them get out and be living in fear for
I would not.
Especially after some dickhead sent you, please don't let them out letter to them.
Yes.
But also she was taken from her house effectively.
Yeah.
Initially. So, there's nowhere safe. She'd be terrified everywhere she is.
The whole community would be as well, like everyone. Matt, you don't need that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're animals. So that is...
Well, animals at least have some kind of a reason.
I shouldn't say they're monsters.
Though. That's the thing. It's like, the whole time I've been thinking, they're animals. And I think that's very unkind to animals. Animals are not as disgusting as this pair. God, what a story.
It's a cracker, isn't it? Oh my God, it was just such... Where I ended up with this was a bit like you, like when you're hearing her tell you what happened, it's, she survived and she's been through it. So whilst it's traumatic, there's a sadness that comes with it that someone has got that in their lived experience, right? So that's where I think the tears come from. It's that like, oh my God, like it's not just the shock and the horror of it, it's her knowing that she's dying, the sadness of hearing that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I try to comfort myself that a victim has died without really realising what's happening to them and hasn't suffered. But in this case, because she survives it, but also because of her mental clarity throughout the whole thing, there's no question that she experienced every moment of that. And then it makes you go, God, for all the other of the 239 cases that we've covered prior to tonight, where you've told yourself hopefully they were unconscious or whatever when this happened, Jesus, And then the whole out-of-body experience too is an extraordinary thing.
Well, that's where I chose to err on the positive. So the day that I sort of found the crime and went through, I was like, my head was going, whoop, like it was just the horror of what happened had to be replaced with something else. And I think for me, I felt like there was I think I live in so much fear of something like this happening. And sometimes there are weeks where I'm like, I don't want to hear another story. Some of the stuff we've heard by this point, it'd be enough to be horrified for life, right? And when she described someone saying that she wasn't in pain and that she felt removed from it, I was like, I've got to find something in that to give me some kind of...
Well, there is a physiological thing, apparently. Your body does protect you. Like when you cut your hand off or cut a finger off or something, people will say it didn't actually hurt. And there's something about the body protecting itself or the mind protecting itself by people not having a memory of being in pain at the time.
Yes. So
it does
much
happen,
of that. So what she's got is this experience, which is, I can see that, I can hear this, that sounds revolting. What is that? Because she's not feeling it, but she can hear the sloshing or the whatever it is.
I've got something wet on my leg.
Yes.
It's that, my intestine.
But it's not, it's kind of weird. Like it becomes this sort of part perfunctory, part like emotional, like she's above it. Like it's those two things coming together for me, because we don't normally have that in a crime, because we're not getting a sense of, well, this was how I felt. No, we're not. And that was where it was different. And I was like, as horrendous as it is, and I don't know if it's just her, I would hope I hope it's not just her. I hope that people find something, some comfort or the resilience, the drive, whatever it is. There were so many little positive things that she managed to weave into this horrendous experience that sort of have her come out on top. And that's the only way I can look at it, because the thought of having that happen to you and be aware of it is really beyond my comprehension. I cut my finger on a piece of paper. Oh my God, you know what I mean? I'm just not built for this.
You recently did the Hammer murderer, the Hammer bloke.
Yes, yeah.
One of his earlier victims had been belted over the head and thought she had a bad hangover when she woke up, but he'd raped her.
The air hostess, I remember that. Yeah,
and she never remembered. And so I think the brain has different ways of protecting your psyche, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And Alison sounds like she might have had some kind of disassociation throughout the whole experience to some degree. Yeah. She was there, but she wasn't really there.
Yeah.
Which could be a way of... But her physical capability to survive is beyond...
I know, right?
Most... It's like that woman who fell out of a plane and landed in the jungle because her seat went down the tree in exactly the right kind of way and no one else survived. And then she managed to walk out of the
jungle,
Amazon. Years later. Oh, not years later, weeks later or days later, whatever it was. I always remember that as this miraculous story. And it's like, what are the odds? And they're sometimes just when we talk about miracles, I think we were talking about sometimes you do beat the odds, often you don't, but sometimes you do. So it's extraordinary. What about punishments? Because I've been sitting here thinking, what is the worst thing that I can think of that doesn't involve cutting, right? Because I don't want to relive any of that. So I've come up with a punishment. Well, I haven't. I've researched a punishment while talking.
Yeah.
And I've on my friend Britannica, your favourite, on Britannica.com, and I'm looking at really nasty medieval and oldie worldy timey punishments.
I thought you'd just have like a little thing on your what's it called, your screen
On a tab?
Like you just go straight to because you use it so often. It's like
I don't, but I'm just like, oh look, this is bad. So I'm going to go for scaphism. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Apparently,
it's nothing I've ever heard of.
One of the worst and most painful skin-crawling methods of torture. And it was described by the Greeks as a punishment used by the Persians, which somehow feels also on point at the moment. And if they are to be believed, those Persians were in. Anyway, in this form of execution, the accused was trapped between two boats or in a hollowed-out tree trunk and force-fed milk and honey, which doesn't sound too bad, but eventually they got really bad diarrhea, which stayed within the wooden enclosure, and then they were given more milk and honey, and they were smeared with more milk and honey, and they were left out near the sun and near still water, so all the bugs and things would be attracted to the muck and the rot and the sweetness, and they'd either die through dehydration, exposure, or bite and sting wounds. It's pretty gross. I think Franz and Dan need a bit of that, feral bastards.
Good one. Yeah. I was thinking along the lines of torture as well, but I want them to have a very lonely, low end to their lives.
Yeah.
That has nobody else inflicting pain on them. So I was thinking I want them to be like in a dried out well, long way down, maybe with a lid on it so they can't hear any outside noise, but they'll get echoes of any noise. So the noise bit will play on their mind because they'll think they can hear things, but they can't. Complete blackness, cold, so that they're never going to be comfortable whilst they're down there, and a little bit damp. And just see what it is that ends up getting them in the end. Hopefully they have a strong will to live, and so they stay alive for a long time, but knowing that at some point they're going to die from dehydration or run out of oxygen, whatever it might be. So live in a constant state of fear of what's going to get them, but not actually know what it is that's going to get them, and have nobody to support them through it.
Fair enough.
So
I like that you had it was mildly damp.
Just a little bit damp.
Just want it to be enough that it's enough that it's of a nuisance, annoyance.
It might they might get a bit mouldy or something.
Yeah,
you know,
a bit mouldy.
Not wrinkly fingers damp, but maybe mould or fungus or something damp.
Just generally gross.
Just very unpleasant and go on for a while.
Yeah. Swanny?
I really don't know. I can't think of anything that doesn't make me worse in some ways. Do you know what I mean? I just think a public flogging would be. It's
such an awful thing, isn't it? To do something like that for pleasure. Like,
yeah, I know, right?
What on?
Let's do that. Let's do that again.
Yeah,
Get out
let's
of my
do that
way.
more times.
Imagine that, pushing someone out of the way while I'm my turn to slash your throat.
I'm going to fuck the
I don't know
bitch.
how to punish them. I just think they'll go to hell. I just think awful. I really don't know.
It really is the worst and the best of humanity, that story.
Yes. Yeah. So let's choose to try and focus on the people who helped her. And they really did. They were just so good in the sense that they were really on her team, and they just really wanted to make sure that there was no wiggle room for them. The surgeons and that helping save her life, although she seems like she could have got through that herself somewhat. She was just not going anywhere. There is one thing that I do need to say, which is kind of a bit of a side point. Port Elizabeth is no longer called Port Elizabeth. It has a new name, but I cannot, and I have no idea how to pronounce it.
I Googled it before.
Have you seen
I was
that?
like, why does it keep taking me to that place? Yeah,
yes,
right.
that's what it is.
Good Bertha or whatever it is. Yep.
Querbera? I've got no idea. I don't know, but I just think just as a footnote, it was Port Elizabeth when this happened, but it has the name has been changed. So I don't want to come across as being
Kibera, yeah.
culturally. I don't know how to say
with
it.
a click. So it's Kibera. I can't do that because I'm not. I can't. Don't
So
speak
is that
anything.
What language is that?
Kibera. It's oh, I don't know how to say that either. Sorry. It's ISI exosa for the Barkans
I presume
River.
it'll be
oh my God. I can't say any of that.
I'm not saying Afrikaans. I'm saying I presume it'll be
it's
an
not
African
Afrikaans,
dialect.
It's indigenous.
Yeah.
It's an indigenous, local indigenous name.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to say it, sorry. I can't do a G sound like that and then a K. My mouth cannot manage it. Kibera.
I wouldn't know how to do it.
But
there you go.
With
if you looked up Port
sound.
Elizabeth, that's why that says that. It's quite a mouthful.
No, I can't do
it's a scary looking word. Maybe a word that starts with GQ.
GQ, yes, it's unusual. Yes.
Is there something we should be levelling at the parole board? I feel like...
how's she found out by the media?
Well, also, why do they even release people like that?
Yeah.
Because they were caught... They had plans to do it again. It wasn't like it was a one-off. What makes you think that 20-odd years in an all-male prison is going to rehabilitate people? And even if it does, who cares?
Correct.
Like somebody's
chance.
read that case.
After you've done that,
somebody's
you shouldn't get another chance.
Seen what the judges said and gone, oh, no, we know better than all of that. Do you, though?
In one of these articles that I read, the police were really upset. It says the decision to release Dutoy and Kruger on parole also sent shockwaves through the police in Canberra. According to a police officer whose name is withheld, because he's not authorised to speak to the media, he and many of his colleagues learned of the parole with great shock, at the same time she did probably. The police officer was one of the 6 who, together with the crime unit of the Mount Road police station, arrested Dutoy and Kruger at their apartment. Oh, wow. I had forgotten that I even had this. The officer said that they raided the apartment in the early hours of the morning, which we told you. Oh, I said I told you. That also had the women and a baby. Oh, actually says there's 2 women and a baby. I didn't realise the other guy's girlfriend was there too. He said, except for the baby, the rest were all awake. The men were bare-chested, very calm, and they cooperated. The police found bloody clothes of the men in the laundry basket, and the knife which contained the blood spatters was found. Although I was only part of the team that carried out the arrest, it was one of those cases that stays with you. It is only God's will that Alison Botha survived the incident. In my opinion, the 2 men should not have been released. Yeah. And then this comes nicely to a story. It also says, in response, the Rebecca Steenkamp Foundation expressed its concern about the pandemic of gender violence that prevails. Yeah.
They probably only got caught because the bitches didn't do the washing quick enough, and so there was bloodstained clothes there.
I'm impressed they put it in the laundry basket.
What shit partners? It's their fault.
What lovely women as well. Oh, what have you been out doing, darling? Oh, don't worry about that. Just wash these blood-soaked clothes.
Oh, for all you know,
Before
they
the cops get
terrified of their partners. And
they would have been. I'm not.
And all the rest of it. You know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't let's not assume those women were in any way responsible for the depression.
I'm having a go at the psyche of the men who probably would find a way to blame the women, not the women themselves. I mean, they'd be terrified.
True. Okay. Well, that was an absolute shocker, frankly. But an interesting story nonetheless. You know, it's just amazing, just extraordinary, as you said. Remarkable, as you said a lot.
15 times. Remarkable.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it was remarkable. It was.
Sometimes that was. I think remarkable was instead of saying miraculous, because I think sometimes I didn't want to sort of lean too heavily into that, but some of it really was. Yeah. Remarkable.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Swanny. And as we say every week, miss you already.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.